Hey everybody, welcome back to Auto Scholar with Mr. B. I'm Mr. B. Today we have this 2004 Volkswagen Passat. It's got the 1.8 turbo AWM engine in it, and we are going to replace the timing chain tensioner. Now the interesting part about this engine is you have a timing belt and a timing chain. You have the belt that connects the crankshaft to the exhaust side cam, and then the exhaust side cam is connected to the intake cam by a timing chain. So the timing chain in this one is at the back of the cylinder head underneath the valve cover. So the symptoms of a timing chain tensioner that has failed or is starting to fail is a rattle at startup, a cam position sensor code or cam code, allocation codes, things like that, or just noisy operation. So these things can fail a couple of different ways, and the best thing to do is just replace the timing chain tensioner. So the procedure for this is to take the front of the vehicle off, go ahead and put the car to top dead center, take the timing belt off, take both the camshafts out, all this other stuff. And there's a couple of ways around that I'm going to show you to where you're not going to have to take the timing belt off, which is good since we just did this timing belt about 500 miles ago and I didn't really feel like going through the whole process of doing that again. So we learned this in the dealership to where we could get these, we could sneak these tensioners out the back, and all we have to do is remove the intake cam. And the exhaust cam stays the same, so the timing belt does not have to come off of the car. So with this timing chain tensioner, it's a very common failure part on these vehicles, and also it's very common for the gasket underneath those to leak. So this is actually what's happening with this car. The timing chain tensioner is really not bad, but I'm gonna go ahead and replace it out. It's got 170,000 miles in the car. I don't know if it's ever been done. So while I'm going there and changing the gasket, I'm just going to go ahead and change the whole tensioner assembly. So let's go ahead and get started. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe if it taught you anything. Okay, so first step we do, let me click my light on here so you guys can see, is we're going to take the engine cover off. We have one fastener on my car that's holding it on. Second thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get the coils out of the way. So push, go ahead and get these out of the way. Also, if you pull one of these coils out and you see it's oil soaked, you have a bad valve cover gasket, which you need to replace the valve cover gasket if you're doing this anyway. So go ahead and get those out of the way. And now we're going to get this 10 millimeter out here, the 10 millimeters all through here. We are going to take this hex socket here and get these mounts for these pipes, the PCV pipe, excuse me, out of the way, and the secondary air injection pipe out of the way. And then we're going to just loosen our timing cover right here. You may have to move some vacuum lines, coolant line out of the way. I'm going to move this out, that way we can check and see if we're at top dead center. You don't have to take this out, you just pull it back. So let me go ahead and get my tools and get that done. Okay, so that wasn't the easiest valve cover to get off for sure. Now, while you have the valve cover off, it is a good thing to clean this and get it all cleaned off. Okay, now that we've got the valve cover off, let me go over the game plan of what we're going to be doing. Let me go ahead and get these. Go ahead and take these off right here. Just put them away somewhere. You're going to want to clean those off. And this is our intake cam, and this is our exhaust cam. Our exhaust cam is the one that is connected to the timing belt. And so the game plan for this is we are going to mark this chain to the sprocket on exactly where it goes. And my favorite thing to use is just some liquid whiteout or some white paint or something like that to mark that chain. And we're going to mark both sides to exactly where that chain hits that sprocket, okay? And if we do that, we don't need to turn this to top dead center or anything. We can just roll this camshaft out, take this off, put another one in, roll it back in. Now, if you are changing the chain, this is not going to work for you. It's only if you're just changing the tensioner. So there's nothing wrong with the tensioner. There's nothing wrong with my chain. So I'm just going to change the tensioner, and I'm going to show you how to put that gasket in underneath there. So we're going to go ahead and get the valve cover gasket out of the way. And we're going to take off this cam cap, this one, all these right here, and the front one. But to do that, we have to take off the camshaft position sensor because it straddles between the head and this cam cap. So we're going to take that off, and we're going to take this front cam cap off, all these, and the two back ones. And then we're going to unbolt this, and then we're going to roll this cam out, and we're going to pull this out either through the front or the back, whichever's easier. Slide the other one in, put everything back, retorque it, and we're done. So here's my paint marks right here. And that's going to ensure you want to mark all the way to the camshaft. I normally mark all the way to the cap, and then I normally mark a little paint blob. See if I can get this thing to focus in the chain itself. So when we roll this back together, it will be perfectly in time. And there's no way to get it wrong if it goes back exactly like that. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to remove the valve cover gasket. Got to kind of pull it up all at once. And you'll want to replace this, of course. Now, cam caps. Cam caps are very important in the way that you take them off, because if you take them off wrong, you can crack one of these cam caps, and then honestly the only way to really repair this correctly would be to replace the cylinder head. So these are only torqued down to like 7 foot-pounds, but they actually hold a lot of pressure on them because the lifters are pushing up against the camshaft, so there's a lot of tension on these. Now, the important thing is we have to keep these in order. You can't flip them backwards or anything like that. If you do that and try to tighten it down, they will most definitely crack, and you'll have to put a cylinder head on here, which is a whole lot more work. So we have to take the cam position sensor off. You have two 10 millimeters here. Then we're going to take the back caps off right here. Then we're going to take this front double cap off. And then we are going to take these off in a certain order, and I'll tell you which order here. Before we get too far, we need to go ahead and compress this as well. Go ahead and unplug it. And you should have a tool that comes with the new tensioner, but if you didn't buy a new tensioner and you're just doing the seal for this, then you'll need to buy that tool separately. This is the tool. You'll just take it off. You're going to hold this together. There'll be some spring pressure against here. That'll come off. Set it over to the side. So there'll be a threaded hole down there. You may have to kind of scoot this chain over a little bit. Make sure you're not cross-threading it. This is going to compress the shoes of that chain. When this happens, the chain should start getting loose. Okay. Go ahead and finish getting these caps off. And again, these have to be kept in order. If you have to mark them, we're also going to inspect these cam caps and make sure that they're not damaged. If you've ever had low oil pressure or anything like that, cam caps are the first thing that are going to get damaged. I normally just leave the bolts in them. Now, you will have your seals underneath here. You need to just leave them alone. Don't move them. We're going to take our back caps off. I normally do this by hand. I don't use a ratchet or anything. Just give them a little wiggle. They'll come off. So you need to make sure on the back of these cam caps that they're pretty smooth. There's no heavy grooving or anything in there. There's no burning marks or anything like that. This one looks pretty good. And again, I'm going to put it in the exact position it came off of. So I'm going to take off this one right here, then this one. Once I get these out of the way, I'm going to alternate bolts going diagonally with the last two caps. And that's going to make sure that the camshaft doesn't flex and it doesn't bend or tear anything up. I also want to go ahead and unbolt this tensioner before I do that. There's a little electric plug back here. Just pops right off. So go ahead and unbolt the tensioner. And pull the bolts out. They're all the same size. This should pop loose. And this will be a lot easier when we get this camshaft out of the way to pop this out. All right, so this one, and this one, and this one. That will just easily release. And I normally do these diagonally. These are pretty easy to strip as well, so just be careful. Oh, broke my bit. Let me go get another bit. Yeah, so that was a Matco bit too. That was not a cheap bit. There we go. These are definitely tighter than they should be. So easy does it on this. Just little bits at a time. This will come up. Now, after you get all your cam caps off, you've got to keep these in order, okay? Very, very important. So now your cam is just laying there. All right, so now what we're going to do is a little tricky. We've got to swing all this out, pull this tensioner out, then take the tool off of this one, put it on the new tensioner, and slide everything back in and change that gasket. So as long as we end up with our marks in the same spot, we don't have to worry about anything. What you may run into is this combination valve may get in the way. So we may have to remove that as well. Just depends on kind of how much you swing you can get out of it. There we go. So, roll this out. We'll slide our tensioner out. Just like that. And again, we're just going to lay this back down. Everything is still in the same spot, okay? We're able to sneak this out. So you can see the grooves here. and that's wear. So we're going to put the new one on, take this off, put it back on the new part. We can remove our gasket right here. Here's our old gasket and our old half moon, which is hard as a rock. We'll pull that old half moon out, and it is just, that's what was causing the big oil leak here, is this half moon. So we're going to clean up all our gasket areas, and then we'll go back with the tension. Okay, so we're going to clean the gasket area up, just wipe it down. So these are the two pieces that we're going to need to put back on. This is the half moon. This is the part that normally goes bad all the time. And what I do is I take a little bit of sealant here. And pro tip, also, I have students that never put the cap back on these, and so they dry out, so you can't get them out. Just cut the corner off right there, and you've got sealant again. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put just a little bit on the inside of this half moon. And this is just going to seal when it hits that cylinder head. Also, Volkswagen requires you to put some right here in this area, okay? So that's going to seal against the so I normally just put a small bit here, a little bit more. And you have that blue stuff right here is actually sealant that's put on there. Don't get any sealant near this. This is where the oil comes through. And of course, these are where your bolt holes go through. Then we're going to place these back on the head. And then we've got our tensioner back together with the tool. And then we're just going to slide everything back together and make sure that those lines are still lined up on the cam and the chain. All right, so now we're just going to do the reverse. Pick this cam up. You want to check your marks before you do this and make sure they're in the same spot. We're going to, this ain't the easiest thing to do. Roll this back in. It's kind of aggravating, I ain't gonna lie. Having a fight with this secondary air injection valve. When you get it right, it should just fall back in. Hard part is getting it right. Make sure that your gasket's not moving back here. Yeah, so very aggravating, but we got it done. So now we've got to move our chain back because it has spun a bit where it was. Here's our mark right here. And our mark right here. All right, we're all set. Okay, so now that that struggle is over, I'm gonna go ahead and just put these bolts in, everything hand tight. There's a specific way I'm gonna tighten these up. Right now I'm just getting them organized. Definitely want to start these by hands. Do not want to get these cross-threaded. What I'll do is I'll turn this to top dead center and I'm going to show you guys how it'll line up. I'll show you how to count teeth. So we'll be sure that it lines up. That's not something I normally do because I know there's no way those lines line up. There's no way for this to be out. But I'll show you guys. Okay, so when we tighten these up, we're going to tighten them up just how they came off in the same order, and they torque down at 84 inch-pounds, 7 foot-pounds, or 10 Newton meters. Okay, so not a whole lot of torque hold these in. Okay, so just tighten them up evenly, go in a crossword fashion, and you're going to work, you know, here, 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 and then your end caps. Okay. And just very evenly. Okay, so this is pretty controversial in the Volkswagen pages, but how to time this engine up. So we have this at top dead center, and you can see this notch here, this camshaft is right there at that arrow. It's kind of hard to see. But so we go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. And we should be about at the 11 o'clock position here of our notch. And that should be timed up. Okay guys, going back together, got a couple of tips. First of all, you need to put some RTV, just glob a little bit in the corners here of this gasket before we put it back together. Do not forget these, okay? That's a big thing. A lot of people, including me, have forgotten to put those back in and have to tear this back down to put them back in because they're sitting over there on the table. So here's the valve cover. Putting it back on, I'll put it through the vapor hone machine, and came out perfect. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this back together. We'll crank it up and see what we got. Here we are, running like a top. Everything's good to go. Should be good for another 170,000 miles at least. Okay, everybody, if you crank up your vehicle and you hear a little bit of a rattle come out of that tensioner area, that's actually normal. It takes a second for the oil pressure to get back up in there and pump up into that tensioner. Now, if your check engine light comes on and gives you camshaft allocation codes or misfires or something like that, or you have a rough idle, there's a good chance you didn't get that cam directly back into that same position. So the video part that I showed you where to count the links and stuff, you need to go back to that and make sure that you have that correct. You need to start off at top dead center to do that. So if you mark everything though, I just proved to you, no problems. You just have to mark everything, and you gotta make sure that your marks don't come off, and you have to make sure that you're following every instruction in this video, and you'll be timed. It's not a problem. So if you like the video, if you learned anything from the video, just go ahead and give me a like. Subscribe to the channel. I'm putting out a lot more Passat stuff lately because I'm trying to get my baby back on the road here. And I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, VK. I put a lot of stuff on there that I can't put on YouTube. So follow me over there. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I'll try to answer them the best I can and try to stay positive. And we'll see you next time on Auto Scholar with Mr. B.